Yeah. Good morning. Welcome to Facebook viewers. We're sorry for the late start. We had a bit of a technical difficulty, but we've rectified it now and we're quite fine. I want to this morning introduce our panel, and it is myself and the wonderful former Minister of Health, former Minister of Foreign Affairs, and former MP for Castries Central. Also the founder of Synergy, Madame Sarah Flood Bobrea, who also served as the Speaker in the House. So she has a very illustrious history of public service. Today she's going to focus on the health crisis, given the fact that she has got a tremendous amount of experience in the management of healthcare. But for now, before she comes on, I'm going to focus on the greatest crime that the government has committed against the people. So in addition to the crime crisis which affects you on a daily basis, the murders, the burglaries, the rape, the incest, the robberies at gunpoint, the government is also committing a crime never seen before at a scale in St. Lucia, and that is the CIP program and the management of it. Recently, you would have seen on television the news broke of this criminal organization out of Montenegro that is called BMAX. And the founder or the owner is a gentleman called Majalovic. Please excuse the pronunciation. But we're not too concerned about Majalovic, but we are concerned about Majalovic because Majalovic is the principal shareholder of the company BMAX that the government of St. Lucia has appointed and signed an agreement with to do a housing project at Rockall. The news broke, the question was put to the Prime Minister in whose constituency the project is being done. What is your reaction to the recent developments internationally that the owner of the company appointed to do the Rockall housing project have been arrested and charged with multiple crimes in his home country of Montenegro? The Prime Minister's response was shocking and appalling. It is reckless from a head of state that you appoint to be the custodian of your country's reputation, your country's values, your country's moralities, your country's standards, and the very destiny and survival of the people in that country. So the Prime Minister disappointingly said to the press that he's not concerned about international events. But what he's concerned about is really providing housing assistance for the poor people of St. Lucia. I want to say to the Prime Minister this: you cannot use the plight of poor people to make an excuse for crime. Crime committed against the country is crime and should not be tolerated at any level, under any circumstances, and the poor people of this country ought not to be used as an excuse for you, the government, to be in collusion to stand by and watch this unprecedented level of abuse of our patrimony to take place in this country. The opposition will not stand by and allow your government to do it. And I heard the Minister of Social Equity saying on the news that he's tired of questions with the CIP. And if any of us have any questions, that we should direct those questions to the CIP office and we will get the various answers. Well, newsflash, Mr. Minister, there are several outstanding questions that remain unanswered. And every time the Prime Minister or the Minister speaks on this matter, we have more outstanding questions. I'll get to those questions later. But for now, Prime Minister, do not use this as, do not use the poor, rather, as an excuse for you to allow bubble in this country to continue. Now, Prime Minister also made some public utterances on the escrow account recently. And he was asked quite recently, what is the balance and has the escrow account been reconciled? That's an appropriate question, you would think, for a Minister of Finance. Well, he said that what he's being told is that the escrow account, and I quote him, is either being reconciled, it is reconciled, or is about to be reconciled. Now, Mr. Prime Minister, you are the Minister of Finance. We are in the middle of a scandal. And you've got a company that is being hauled before the American courts in a RICO case for money laundering and for fraud. We've seen another Prime Minister in another country in his own parliament said that there has been some gross violation of the principles of law and order, and there has been crime and fraud committed in our sister Caribbean country of St. Kitts by Galaxy, who I'm very familiar with, and who has been attempting to establish a hotel here in St. Lucia. The people of St. Lucia know the story all too well. But let me remind you, Mr. Prime Minister, of your responsibility under the Public Finance Management Act passed by the previous UWP administration, an act that we worked with the World Bank. And I'm very, very proud of the level of financial accountability which was instilled. And under the Act, Part 1, which speaks to the administration of the Act, it goes on to state the functions of the minister. And there are several parts here from A to about Q, so there are several. But I'm going to, for the interest of time and focus and relevance, I'm going to quote a few subsections. Subsections F, which is to promote transparency and accountability in fiscal policy and operation. So the Act says the minister is responsible for that. It goes on to say under subsection I that the minister is also responsible for efficiently and effectively manage the funds of the government, manage revenue and expenditure, including monitoring and evaluating the execution of the budget of the government and for the fiscal policy objectives. Subsection O states the minister is responsible, that's the Minister of Finance, the portfolio held by the Prime Minister. In subsection O of the under administration of the Public Finance Management Act states that he should supervise and guide the financial operation of any government agency. We didn't say it. It is said by the laws governing your job. Then we also have a section that deals with the powers of the Minister of Finance. And here are the powers of the Minister of Finance. The Minister of Finance, in the case of the Prime Minister, can request information from a government agency or any accounting officer. The CIP is a government agency. Mr. Prime Minister, why aren't you requesting the information yourself? Why are you hiding behind other people? This is a dereliction of your duty. This is a very reckless and cavalier approach to the finances of this country. Then it goes on to say, in Part B, the Minister of Finance can issue instructions to the Director of Finance to ensure budget and accounting systems follow a system of classification which is transparent, meaning that any member of the public, any official, including the leader of the opposition, should make those information available if you're really transparent and you're living in the spirit of this act. Should be accountable. Not to say, well, you were told that the escrow account of Galaxy is either being reconciled, was reconciled, or is about to be reconciled. That's too wishy-washy. That's weak. We don't need weak leadership at this time. We need sure, solid leadership that can make sure that we allay the fears of the various stakeholders in this crisis, in this crime against the people of St. Lucia. This is not your money. This is the money that belongs to the people of St. Lucia. And it also goes on to say, accountable and consistent with international principles. Now, I love what the other subsection says, and I need you to hear it as well. In Part C, under the section that deals with the powers of the Minister of Finance, it also goes on to say that the minister can issue a directive to a government agency to supply specified information. So when the Prime Minister tells you that he don't know, he allows his ministers to do their job. No, this is your job, Mr. Prime Minister. You have to take the bull by the horns to make sure that this fraud, that we can bring an end to the alleged corruption which is taking place. Several months. The RICO case was filed sometime in May. And what it is accusing us of is fraud, is money laundering. And those are very, very serious and damning charges that have had untold impact on the reputation of our country. And you, sir, Mr. Prime Minister, you have done nothing but try to deflect, try to go here and go on a side. You have attacked journalists when they've asked the specific questions, and you have been less than forthcoming with the information needed to put the questions that are going a begging to an end. Subsection 2 on the Part C of that Act. Listen to this very well. It says this: in the case of a statutory body, which the CIP agency is, to submit the accounts of the statutory body to an independent auditor for a special audit or review. That is not the job of the CIP minister. The Public Finance Management Act empowers the Minister of Finance to say that I, Minister of Finance, have the power, in the case of a statutory body, to submit accounts of the statutory body to an independent auditor for a special audit or review. Mr. Prime Minister, stop the bleeding of the CIP funds. You have the power to do it. This is very reckless on your part. And if you refuse to do your job, then step down and allow other people to do your job. Mr. Prime Minister, the people of St. Lucia are tired of asking questions without answers that are coming forward. The way that your government has dealt with this has robbed the people of St. Lucia of millions. The escrow account is vested in the interests of the developer and the state. I do not agree with the CIP minister when he told the Chamber of Commerce that the money from the real estate program doesn't belong to the state but belongs to the developer. The passports belong to the people of St. Lucia, and the funds belong to the people of St. Lucia. And the laws in the CIP Act are clear what those funds are supposed to be used for. They are supposed to be used for the development of the hotel and nothing only. So if, Mr. Prime Minister, you said in your last budget that the cost of the Galaxy project is $1 billion EC dollars. $1 billion EC dollars is exactly 400 million US dollars thereabouts. Then why is it that you will allow Galaxy in the allocation to sell up to 6,000 passports? I've spoken to several board members. I've spoken to several lawyers who are in the know, and they have been speaking to me about other issues regarding the CIP. And what they have unwittingly admitted is that it is 6,000 files that the government has allowed for Galaxy. I'm not saying that this is speculation anymore. I'm saying that this is fact. And I'm going to quote those people if you want to challenge us. And we see all of the evidence that has been made public when a certain law firm did issue about 450 applications. And in those 450 applications, we saw the serial numbers, where to date there have been 11,000 passports that have been issued by or has been approved by the CIP office. Come out and say that Dominic Fede misspoke or tell an untruth. But you guys are hiding behind not answering, hoping that this will go away. You're hiding behind the system, and this is not good enough. And it is not fair that the people's money should go to pay the court cases of the CEO of the CIP. Who pays the legal fees for the mother today who is struggling with crime and is trying to bring her daughter's crime to justice? Who pays for that? Who pays for the legal fees of the mother who is grappling and trying to find closure because of the death of her son? Who pays for that? But we're able now to say unashamedly and publicly that we're going to pay from Claude Emmanuel's personal troubles. But yet you're saying that he was sued in his personal capacity. But if he was sued in his personal capacity, why should the people of St. Lucia be made to pay for him? It's not right. So, Mr. Prime Minister, stop the bleeding. The United Workers' Party, therefore, calls on the government to do the following. One, we believe that this CIP management continues to be the biggest crime committed upon this country. This is one of the largest scandals in history. We're talking billions of dollars that are involved in this. And the people that are at the helm of the CIP office, we cannot no longer accept that they do not know and they're innocent of all of the charges that are being bandied around. So the CEO, the minister, the board, we don't know whether the chairman has resigned or not. Again, another unquestionable response when the minister said on a program that the journalists who raised the question would have to ask the question to the board chairman whether he has resigned. I think that the board at this point should resign, because the whole board, the minister, and the CEO, they're all responsible for what's going on. They're all responsible for not leveling with us. If the CEO is not willing to come to a press conference and answer questions about this important statutory body under whose stewardship he has been given responsibility, then he needs to step aside. We're talking about too much money. We need to revoke citizenship that were undersold. All illegal citizenships that were undersold under the CIP is a crime under our laws. The statute is clear that if you are going to buy into the Galaxy scheme, which is real estate, then we need to know. We also need to take action against the agents that provide those services to those illegal sales. We need to disband any law firm in St. Lucia that has processed passports under the illegal price. You're breaking the law. Government at the apex of decision making should set the tone and set the example so that we have good moral standards permeating all throughout our society, so that the man on the street can take his signal. But when we see criminals in cabinet, when we see government ministers who are questionable, whose reputations are unsavory, who have not answered all charges that have been leveled against them. I mean, this government's favorite thing is to either drop the cases, go to arbitration, bully people with legal lawsuits, or like they've done with Martinez, pretend like they have not spoken to their lawyers to try to drop the CIP case. This is egregious. You guys have placed St. Lucia on the brink of collapse with the way that you're managing this country. It is unacceptable. We need to also make sure that we provide an update on the works of Galaxy. I saw the news report last night on DBS, and it doesn't look like there's $1 billion EC of works on the ground. And so if I have to go by what the minister said in an earlier interview, and that's how we have to go in the opposition. You have to stitch all of what they have said together. And he said that Galaxy was fully subscribed. It means that they have sold all of their passports. How many passports are we talking about? Is it 6,000? Is it 20,000 for the hotel? How many did you allocate? A very simple question. We don't buy it that you need to ask Galaxy for permission. Our laws are clear. The Public Finance Management Act is clear. And you, sir, Mr. Prime Minister, you have the power to, in the case of a statutory body, submit the accounts of the statutory body to an independent auditor for a special audit or review. This really hurts. Anyway, to undertake a special inquiry into the operations of the CIP, it must be done now, not later, and to give us very urgently a very professional and independent update on the escrow account. How much money has been placed in the escrow account? How much money has been drawn down from the escrow account? Does it now correspond with the work done by Galaxy? Do we have $1 billion EC dollars in works? And St. Lucians, I want you to go and look at that DBS report and to see whether that represents $1 billion EC of work. There are about 10 Chinese that are on the site, and there's nothing that's going on. The place is a ghost town. What is going on? I heard the minister recklessly telling the press with no concern that they have had delays because of supply chain issues. Really? Do you think we're stupid, Mr. Minister? Do you think the people of St. Lucia are that stupid that we will believe you? That is nothing going on? Where are the contractors? Why aren't they two local contractors that were doing work? Where aren't their equipment on site? If works were happening, but there's no sign of work taking place. You guys are robbing the people of St. Lucia. I'm sorry, but I've got to put it that way. Now, I want you to imagine what the CIP funds could have done for you, the people of St. Lucia. I watch in amazement every time I go to the supermarket how you, the ordinary folks of this country, struggle to make it. But there are people who are making millions. There are people who are there fattening their pockets on your passports. You have to take the line when you come from the communities in the south, coming from far places like Vieux-Fort and Choiseul, waking up at 5 in the morning, take a bus, get to the passport office only to be told that you don't have the sufficient enough documents. And they're running you around. You have to take the line. And then they're telling you there's a mold problem. All the while that there is this mold difficulty in giving you a passport. They're issuing thousands to the CIP, to all the Chinese and Arabs, a lot of them under questionable character. They're buying your passports illegally. And I want the government to prove that that is so. And now they leave you, the people, to suffer. They had you to go quite recently and struggle to finish your back-to-school supplies. And I watch many parents, even the second-hand books some of you couldn't afford. You mean the government could not use the millions we're talking about from the CIP to make sure that they increase the subsidy or the bursary to you, the poor families of this country, so that you can finish your back-to-school supplies, so that your child can have the bags and the shoes and the books and everything that they need? You mean they have to put you a shame like that so that your child has to be helped by a teacher? That you're sending your child without lunch to some of the schools? because the feeding program is not adequate enough, or you can't afford in some instances to pay for the school feeding program? That's what they have done to you, the people of St. Lucia? You mean they've allowed those of you that have got cars to go to the gas station? You are paying double in the excise tax because the Economic and Social Review has shown that the level of excise tax that you are paying accounts for the high gas prices that you are paying at the pumps. And if you look at the other OECS countries, their gas prices are much lower than us because their governments have passed on the savings that has happened on the world market in oil prices. You mean to tell me that electricity has gone up and they couldn't come up with an electricity support program like the Alan Chastanet government did during COVID so that they can help you, so that they could make sure that you get by? You mean to tell me that income support that we gave during COVID because we recognized the times, that they couldn't treat your cost of living crisis? And I don't agree with them that the cost of living crisis that we face is not generated locally. Instead of giving you a break, they put on a levy, a tax, to make the goods in the supermarket even more expensive. Is that right? No, it's not right. And so we are calling on them to stop the crime. We are calling on them to do what is right. Call elections. Thank you. And I neglected to invite my colleague, the wonderful former government minister and MP for Castries Central, Sarah Fluckbober.
Thank you very much, Senator Fede. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, St. Lucia. It's the middle of the morning, and I imagine that we're doing many different things at this time. There's some of us at home cooking lunch. There's some of us at home taking care of an relative. Maybe we're out shopping in the supermarket. We're hearing this live. Maybe we're on a bus. Maybe we're a minibus driver driving a bus, or we're a passenger. Driving our car down the busy roads in St. Lucia. Maybe we're a patient at OKEU or St. Jude. Or maybe we're a nurse or doctor working in the healthcare system. I want to say a very pleasant good morning to everybody. And I'm here because in addition to the crises that Senator Fede spoke about, we have a serious health crisis in this country. And our healthcare system has always had challenges. We know that. But I doubt when we went to the polls in 2021, we ever thought that we would be talking today about the crisis of the OKE hospital. When we went into elections in 2021, St. Jude was on everyone's mind in terms of what the crisis was. And that is still a very serious matter that needs to be addressed, St. Jude, and to make sure that our patients who are at the stadium can be transferred to a world-class facility, which it seems will not happen under this current administration. But now to chop it off, we have a very serious crisis at the OKE hospital. So now both the north and the south of the island. The critical issue with healthcare. So I want us to do something perhaps that we haven't done at Alive before, given that things are so critical and given that it affects all of us. I would like us to just stop for a moment quietly, whatever we are doing, and say a quiet prayer for our country, but in particular on this occasion, for the patients in our hospitals, for the doctors, the nurses, and the staff who work at our hospitals and in the healthcare system, to ask God to just give us the grace we need, to give the doctors, the nurses, and the staff the strength and the graces that they need in these times to keep things going. We certainly do need the help of God in everything we do, but at this moment we need it more than ever because it is a crisis. So I'm going to pause while I say my silent prayer, and we all can do that. We want our brothers and sisters to know in the healthcare system that we are with them. Now, I would like to, first of all today, thank the St. Lucia Medical and Dental Association. I want to thank them publicly on behalf of all St. Lucians for the letter that they wrote to the Board of Directors of the Millennium Heights Complex on July 31, 2024. That is over 2 months ago. I want to thank them for their sincerity, for their concern, and for doing the right thing. And if I just want to go back to that letter, it was addressed to the board, the chairperson of the Board of Directors of the Millennium Heights Complex, and it was signed by the president of the St. Lucia Medical and Dental Association. She says she writes on behalf of the physicians. The president wrote on behalf of the doctors of the Millennium Heights, and she alerted the president of the board as to the dire situation of OKEO 2 months, more than 2 months ago. And she says that the problems are too numerous, but the letter will highlight some of the most salient points, which was a long letter that listed many, many problems. And the letter says that these points of the letter were coming out of a meeting of the consultant body at the hospital. And I think we know what a consultant is at a hospital. The highest level of doctor is a consultant, somebody who's specialized in a particular field. So you have your consultants, the most experienced, knowledgeable, able people at your hospital, calling your attention to certain things that are critical and important for the sector. More than 2 months ago. And the letter says that the situation is untenable. The letter recognized that there have always been challenges in the healthcare system in the years. But at this point, when the letter was written in July, the situation was untenable, and your consultants are telling you that. The consensus of the physician body, the letter goes on to say, so it's not just anybody flying up and saying this. The best advice you can get is coming from this letter to alert the government, please. Do something. Things are critical and urgent. This was of 2.5-page letter, and I'm just highlighting a few things. The letter says that staff members have anxiety at the thought of entering the emergency room. That's how bad things are or were even at the time. And I imagine that they are worse even now. The letter goes on to say, when is a definitive and sustainable solution to prevent premature loss of life going to be proposed? And that's what I want to focus on this a little bit. When we don't do the right things at our hospitals, we cause deaths. By our omission, we cause death. And I'm not talking about people working in the hospital. Those who are charged with the responsibility of ensuring that the hospital works properly. And here, the SLMDA wrote this letter to the board of directors, to the chairperson. Now, how do we all know about this letter? This letter became public. And we recall that when this letter became public, the housing minister, the MP for Castries Central, vilified the president of the SLMDA. We saw it, called her names in the presence of the Prime Minister. And afterwards, when the Prime Minister was questioned, he pretended not to know. We all knew who the housing minister was talking about. And I'm going back to the letter. The SLMDA president continues to say on behalf of the association, this current climate, however, has caused so much unrest and frustration that many feel helpless and at their wits' end and are ready to resign. Is the board at all concerned? I'm continuing to quote. Is the board at all concerned about the fact that 4 senior consultants and multiple junior physicians have resigned over the last few months? Or about the mass migration of nurses and the board, and it goes on. Today, and of course, I can only say what I heard because we haven't heard the Minister of Health come to address the nation on this very critical situation. I heard that up to this point, 7 doctors have resigned from the OKEU. 7 doctors. When the letter was written 2 months ago and the board, it was brought to the board's attention and to the minister's attention and to the Prime Minister's attention, to the attention of the entire nation, because we all knew about it. 4 had resigned. What was done? Now 7 have resigned. I understand. I understand. Now, I'm subject to correction on this, and the only person who can correct us is an official from the Ministry of Health. And I would suggest it be the minister. This is a crisis, and we want to hear from someone who is accountable to us. My understanding is that the head of nephrology has resigned. Consultant. This is the doctor who deals with the kidney and dialysis patients. My understanding is that the head of the obstetrics and gynecology has resigned. Consultant. My understanding is that the head of surgery has resigned. Consultant. The consultant is the highest, most specialized doctor in the chain. My understanding is that another doctor, senior doctor in internal medicine, has resigned. My understanding is that the medical director has resigned. My understanding is that 2 junior house officers have resigned, 7 in the last 2 months. Who is left at VH? Sorry, who is left at OKEU? And my understanding too is that some of these doctors are the best that we have in St. Lucia. All subject to correction. This is what I've understood. Now, the question, of course, is, the natural question is, well, what about the patients? What about the patients? So I asked someone from the health field, but these doctors have resigned from the staff of VH. Do they still have visiting privileges? Because the question I want to know is, what about their patients who are there? Can they still go to the hospital, albeit that they're not members of staff? Do they have visiting privileges that they can still attend to their patients? I was told no. Again, I'm subject to correction. Mr. Minister, if I have misspoken, please quickly address the nation on this issue. And we have to ask, where are these doctors going? How will their patients find them to continue their care? So I am assuming, I'm hoping that they will go to another hospital where at least the patients can have access to them. Now, I want to pause here. You know, we often, and I need to do it because if St. Jude is in crisis, OKEU is in crisis, Castries Health Center is closed, I understand that the residents of Castries Central have to go all the way to Cicero to get care. Victoria Hospital is more or less closed. Again, the minister can confirm that. I have to take this opportunity to thank Tapio Hospital. We don't do it often. Because at this point, where will these doctors go and how will patients access them? And as I was going through the letter from the SLMDA, there's a part I want to read, and I would like to, on behalf of the people of St. Lucia, say thank you to Tapio Hospital. We speak about the exorbitant fees there, and of course we all feel it. It is an issue. The letter says, when the proverbial wheels fall off the wagon and these critical decisions have to be made or the necessary drugs to be sourced, the letter is talking about the shortage of drugs. It is the private sector, Tapion Hospital, Tapion Pharmacy, which has stepped in all too often, providing supplies free of cost or trusting that the family will dig up the funds from somewhere to pay for it later. Tapion has been supporting the public sector. But at the rate it's going there, if we are draining the private sector and our hospitals are getting worse and worse and worse, what will happen? So this situation is critical, and that is why I'm here today. I would like to call on the Minister of Health and the Prime Minister, stop whatever you are doing and address this issue. And Prime Minister, it's not enough. When this letter came out and the attack was made on the SLMDA, the Prime Minister was quick to come out and find some money and throw at OKEU. He found $10 to $15 million. And he threw at OKEU, go solve your problems. Now, I seem to recall, and again, I'm subject to correction on this, I seem to recall that when the Prime Minister made the funds available to OKEU as a political move, I would say, I seem to recall he said something to the effect, now I've given you all the money, go and manage, suggesting that he's not a doctor, he's not, go, here's the money, go and do what you have to do. It doesn't work that way, Prime Minister. When you put people first, when you really care, you take an interest in what's happening. You provide the resources and you make sure the environment is there so that these resources can bear fruit. Okay? So your political move was aimed at protecting the victory, not protecting the health and lives of St. Lucians. So this is what it has caused now. You were warned, you were given, the SLMDA put its neck on the block. They did. They were very brave to write such a well-structured, frank letter saying that a crisis is coming. Please, let's avert it. Instead of thanking them, these consultants who took their time. I draft letters all the time, and sometimes a letter can take you 2 or 3 days to draft, depending on the nature of it, and to make sure you document whatever you need to in the most appropriate way. To think that these doctors left what they were doing, left the patients' bedsides, and sat there and wrote this letter, and what they got was a slap in the face. And now look, the very thing they were warning us about is happening. You think these doctors wanted to walk off the job? You think they wanted to do that? I want to say, and nowadays I've got to be very careful, because as Senator Dominic said, what they want to do is to silence us, threaten you with court action, send you a legal letter so that you will be quiet and not point out what they're doing. But that can only work on some people. I want to suggest, and I'm following through from the letter, which quote I read before, when is a definitive and sustainable solution to prevent premature loss of life going to be proposed? You know what I want to say today? And I want to address it to the Prime Minister. You know what's going on there? A homicide of a different kind. In quotation marks, homicide. Through incompetence, through indifference, through arrogance, and through abject failure. You are causing loss of life that can be prevented. So there's bleeding on the streets because you're not addressing crime, and there's bleeding at a hospital because you're not addressing the problem. You're more concerned about protecting the victory. You cannot hide it anymore. I recall when we went down to do the protest at St. Jude. We were going down, and one of the reasons was to let the people see the new hospital that we were building, United Workers' Party, to let them see it for themselves, right next to the old one, and to be able to compare it visually. You know what happened when we got on there? We could not go near it. We were stopped from seeing it so that we would not get angry. But look at her in our face at OKEU. I knew about running a health ministry. It's not easy. It's one of the most difficult ministries that you can have, and that's where I was thrown in. I was 26 or 27 at the time. So I'm not saying it's easy. And the doctors here, the brave consultants and physicians, the SLMDA that wrote this, they're acknowledging it's not easy. They know it's not. But what is happening there is people are dying and the government does not care. So we were stopped from seeing St. Jude because if we saw, we would have gotten justifiably angry and we would have taken government to task. The Prime Minister says does not believe he's a police officer. He probably doesn't believe he's a doctor. All of these. Because the buck stops with you. And for too long, the St. Lucia Labour Party, when you ask, what are you doing about crime? They tell you how much money they've spent. What are you doing about health? They tell you how much money they've spent. So just throw the money where you go. And that is why we are in this mess that we are in today. Now, back to the problem. I would like to propose a solution to the government, and I hope it doesn't go into the dustbin, because this is where our solutions seem to go. Now, we have the minds and the brains in St. Lucia to solve this problem. And as the letter said, it is the environment that does not allow for all of the procedures, all the systems, all the protocols to be implemented. I am almost certain that when the European Union gave the grant to get this hospital going, technical support was part of the grant. You hardly find money being given to build infrastructure without technical support in terms of how it's going to be managed being given. So there are resources out there to find out what the problem is and fix it. We are members of the World Health Organization. We pay our dues yearly. The Pan American Health Organization, PAHO, is in our region. The CPC office is in Barbados. PAHO can mobilize in a matter of weeks to help us figure out what is going on there. But we have the PAHO cannot tell us what to do. PAHO can suggest. They can make the technical resources available. But the political will must be there to make sure that the environment and the resources are conducive to enable the suggestions to be implemented. That's what we did when I was the Minister of Health, and 95% of the problems or the complaints from Victoria Hospital were from the emergency department. We went to Howard Hospital, and that's when we brought down Dr. Lisa Charles, our first consultant ever in emergency medicine in St. Lucia. We had never had one before. And we revamped that place. And that is when the complaints went down. And we all recognize that the Victoria Hospital infrastructure was not conducive to modernized healthcare. And that is where we built the OKEU. And look at what's happening now. We're back to square one, worse than it was at VH. This is where we are. 2024, when our government was on the road to building a world-class health facility. This is where we are. Shame. Shame on the government. I pity the people of St. Lucia. So we should reach out for technical support immediately. Minister for External Affairs, I haven't heard from you in a long time. Call our friendly governments. We need clinical support there because the doctors have left. We need clinical support, clinical expertise, technical support. And this is urgent. Urgent, urgent, urgent. So the Prime Minister needs to recognize there is a crisis. The ship is sinking. The ship is rudderless. The captain has abandoned the ship, but he's still getting paid a salary. The Prime Minister has abandoned his responsibilities. Abandoned. He treats those he serves with contempt. He refuses to answer questions or provide information when journalists ask on our behalf. And he does not encourage his ministers to do likewise. So what I need to know is whether he will also be silent on health. And I am not talking about coughing up some money somewhere and throwing it at the health service. I'm talking about dealing with the crisis so we can stop the bleeding and we can stop the deaths. Otherwise, you will have blood on your hands. I am not going to wait for a family member or a friend to be a victim. I'm speaking out now for all of the victims of our poor health situation in this country. And the final thing I'm going to say, today on this, the one thing that's needed in a crisis is decisive leadership. And that's what we do not have in this Prime Minister. Sir, your time is up. Ship up or shape out? Shape up or ship out? Sorry, I'm getting it right. Shape up or ship out? The doctors are leaving. What's going to happen? We have increased accidents on the road, increased homicide, increased crime, and doctors are leaving the hospital? This is madness. And I want to apologize for appearing angry, but I am. I'm angry. It's something called righteous indignation. Then you have a right to be angry. When if you're not angry, something is wrong with you. This is it. This is it. I thank you, brothers and sisters.
Well, thank you very much to you, our viewers. I'm sorry for some of the technical difficulties which we've had. There have been some internet problems. But I want to thank my colleague, Sarah Flood-Beaubref, for that very passionate and thought-provoking presentation. And we thank you so very much. We don't have time for questions, but next week we'll be back here again with another weekly briefing from the United Workers' Party. For those of you who are unable to watch the live on Facebook, please go on the GBD TV YouTube page and you will find a copy of the live. And hopefully you will be able to do the playback on the United Workers' Party Facebook pages. I thank you.